Today we're hands-on with some of the most used drones in Ukraine, from interceptors to bombers and their newest FPVs. So I was just at the Dubai Air Show, and people from all around the world were swarming the Ukrainian booth, wanting to know all about their new drones and how they're doing, what they're doing on the modern battlefield. Lucky for us, the SkyFall team was kind enough to walk us through some of their newest tech. So today, we're looking at their popular P1 Sun interceptors, the new defense mechanism on top of the Vampire bomber, and the internal AI-assisted targeting of their Shrike FPVs. These are some of the very systems being used by the 429th Unmanned Systems Regiment Achilles that we're fundraising for right now. So your donations are helping them get more interceptors, just like the ones we're going to take a look at here. So this right here is one of the most effective drone interceptors in Ukraine. It's the P1 Sun, Pi Sun. I'm told that means something in Ukrainian. I don't speak Ukrainian. Maybe you guys can help me out in the comments. Look, we've teamed up with Zynga's Paw to help Achilles, the 429th Unmanned Systems Regiment, purchase more of these right here, the P1 Suns, to shoot down Russian drones. We're at the Dubai Air Show today at the SkyFall booth, and we've got some of the technology we're helping some of these units pick up that we're able to walk through. So want to start right here. The SkyFall team has been awesome, walking through some of this stuff and giving us examples. I get to actually hold one of these. It's 3D printed, but I mean, still pretty cool. So a couple different aspects here with the P1 Sun. First off, takes off from the ground. Doesn't require any sort of launcher, so this is the kind of thing you can have pretty well forward deployed with units all across the front. It goes up, it has a 24-kilometer range. Let me make sure I've got my cheat sheet here to make sure I got that right. 17-kilometer range, which is pretty significant. If it does not find a drone to intercept, it can come back and it can land, and you can swap out the battery and you can use it again. So it's kind of like a one-way drone that you can, return. And we don't see that at all with most of the FPVs. It's not really a tactic. Now it takes off vertically and shifts over and flies like an FPV as it hunts down Russian drones. This specifically ideal for taking out Shaheds, right? The long-range, one-way Russian attack drones, also known as Garans, Orlons, large recon-style drones, even Lances, the Russian loiter munitions. Of course, you wouldn't use something like this to necessarily take down an FPV. We'll get into some FPVs and a Vampire here in a minute. I know you guys are going to be excited to see that. Little too big to take out an FPV, but it has a day or night camera that you can swap out here on top, so very easily interchangeable. The charge is down here in the base. So the way this works is it flies up, it's approaching a Russian drone, spotted one of those. The challenge is, we've talked to some of the Achilles pilots, you remember it a couple of videos ago, talking to some of the interceptor pilots about the challenges of not just finding the Russian drone, but then actually hunting it down and hitting it, which I think is absolutely crazy that happens at all. Those guys are incredible. So when this gets near the drone, it has a couple different options to bring it out of the sky. It's got an 800-gram charge in the back, which is pretty small, all things considered. That's enough to bring a drone down. Now, within about 5-meter radius. So this does have an impact fuse. So that means when it hits the drone, it will detonate, that charge goes off, brings it down. Pretty easy. It also has the ability for the pilot, back where it's operating, to press a button, detonate this remotely, and again, within 5 meters, it's gonna bring that drone down. And of course, as mentioned, what I think is like the coolest thing here, if there's not one in range, or the Russian drone gets out of range, this thing just comes back down to earth, and it's good to go. You can reuse it when you're ready. So we're gonna move from this over to some FPVs, and then we're gonna hit to the Vampire. I'll be back with you here in a second. All right, so we got a little footage here of the P1 Suns bringing down Russian Shahed drones, one after the other after the other. Now, something I cannot believe I forgot to mention when we were on site, the crew there was telling us that these drone interceptors can actually be air-launched, and what he means by that is dropped out the side of a helicopter, and they can, from there, take off to intercept a Russian drone. So think about that. I mean, we've seen a lot of these helicopters used with their door guns to shoot down these slow-moving Shahed drones. Now add a couple of these P1 Suns in the back, and the crew is dropping those out the side. Say a drone is a little too far off, they're not able to reach it with the helicopter, or there's more than they can engage at once. Turns that helicopter into a drone-killing machine. So these P1 Suns are incredibly versatile. All right, so we're moving on here through the SkyFall booth. Again, what's really cool here, I think, is we got this fundraiser for Achilles right now. These are the systems that Achilles uses, right? The 429th. So I think it's pretty cool to be able to see these and talk to the team at SkyFall and actually like learn some of the capabilities of these weapon systems. I know you're familiar with this one. The Russians are not too kind, they're not too fond of this. It's the Vampire. It's a heavy bomber drone. It is the most widely used heavy bomber in Ukraine right now. It's it's an incredible innovation. This is the kind of thing that is going to have, when you're talking about interceptor drones, I don't know how much we're going to see those used outside of the military. It's going to be huge military application. Countries around the world are going to be picking those up, certainly for years to come. But this is the kind of thing that's going to get a lot of civilian use as well. And what I mean by that is we know of this primarily through a lot of the footage at night, strike missions hitting Russian positions with up to 15 kilogram payloads, and we'll talk more about the strike capabilities here in a second. But during the daytime, they're flying a lot of these don't just sit dormant for the other 12 hours of the day. They're used to resupply units at the front and generally fly behind the front lines, the gray area, right? They're not generally crossing over that in daylight hours because it's a big target, and it's jam resistant, but it can be shot down, right? And Russia's making a lot of efforts to do that. In fact, we are seeing Russia more and more try to target these Vampire or Baba Yaga style drones with FPVs. So they're trying to hunt them down with other drones and bring them down out of the sky. The solution that Ukraine has come up with, actually, well, we may get a clip up here in a second to show it. They've mounted a shotgun right on top. And it ends up with 4 rounds, 12 gauge shotgun shells, that it's a part of a system that automatically detects incoming FPV drones and shoots those down once they're in range. So, it's kind of this constant cat and mouse game of how to stay operational on the battlefield. Now, I mentioned we were going to talk about the capabilities, the strike capabilities here. Constant footage, right? Like some of the most widespread, you got FPV footage, but then the bomber footage is just constant coming out of this war. And what we're seeing from Ukraine, if you look down here underneath, 15 kilogram payload is generally about, now they were kind of joking, they said 15 kilogram is like what it's supposed to carry. That is the designed load for this. But at the end of the day, soldiers do what they have to do, and sometimes it requires a little bit bigger payload than that. So anyways, back down here, we've got 4 kind of dummy rounds, mock-up rounds, roughly 82 millimeter in size. That's an idea of what 15 kilogram payload looks like here. It also can be used for mining. So we're seeing these Vampire drones used more and more to mine approaches behind the front, behind the Russian lines even. So think about that for a second. The Russians moving from the safety of their rear positions, towards the forward lines, thinking, maybe they're looking up in the sky for the Ukrainian FPV drones, thinking that road that they've driven, guys are driving day in and day out, is probably clear of mines, and it's not, because things like the Vampire came in overnight, dropped some additional mines, and now those are blowing up Russian vehicles, So again, I think this is the type of thing, incredibly versatile, right? And this is the kind of thing that's impressive to see this technology come out of the war at baseline. But I think we're going to see a lot of use for this, a big market for this, too, for the civilian market after the war. Search and rescue, be able to drop supplies off to, when the dam was blown in the Kherson region a couple of years ago, and there were a lot of civilians trapped without supplies. This is one of the ways that they got supplies to the civilians, dropping water, medical supplies, and food. So you can see how that would be used in the United States or anywhere around the world for quite a while. And last note here on the Vampire before we move over to some of the strike drones, 2 million missions flown from Vampire drones. Think about that. 2 million missions flown. Again, the #1 top used heavy bomber in Ukraine right now. So kind of a funny side story here. There are Russians at this event. Like you've got the Ukrainian booth there with SkyFall, and you walk out the door, down the runway a couple hundred meters, and there's the Russian booth. And they're showing off their Lancets, as Su-57, Pantsir, and other things. So they're wandering around the show. We saw Russians getting in line to take a look inside of a F-35 mock-up. They were taking pictures with the U.S. Apaches and Chinooks, things like that. And of course, they were coming by the Ukrainian booth, taking pictures and videos of the Ukrainians that were there, displaying the technology, kind of a risk of that job from the Ukrainians. But they also, and you could tell they were Russians because they all wore the Russian flag. It was the only country that did that. They were all sporting a Russian flag. But either way, Ukraine was giving out all these different patches and stickers. We got a whole handful here. They're awesome. And I guess some Russians went over there on one of the days, and they liked one of the patches, the Walking Dead patch right here. And, maybe they know of the TV show, resonated. They were like, hey, we'll grab some of those. And they were just sitting out for people to take. And they looked at it, and they said, are these Russian soldiers? And, you zoom in a little bit. You can see that's a Russian flag on the zombies' shoulders, the Z on their forehead. They said, that's who the zombies are. And they put it down and they walked. They didn't want it anymore, I guess. But anyways, just kind of an interesting dynamic when you think about it. with Russians and Ukrainians exhibiting at the same show like this. But with that, let's shift over to the Shrike FPVs. All right, so last but certainly not least, we've got the Shrike FPV drone here at the SkyFall booth. This is interesting. There's a couple of different things I want to show you guys here. Again, I think this is a really cool experience. Hopefully you're enjoying it, because again, this is the type of stuff that we're helping units like Achilles pick up right now. So your donations are going to pick up things like this, and wait till you see some of this technology. But first off, this is their FPV, the Shrike 10. So the 10-inch version, they've got a bunch. They've got the fiber optic version, they've got a 7-inch version down here. We'll pick that up in a minute. But this 10, if you remember, a couple months ago, there was some footage, we'll overlay it here on the video, where a Ukrainian drone struck a Russian MiA helicopter, brought it out of the sky, making history. The first FPV drone to bring down a helicopter. This is it, right here. It was this drone, the Shrike 10, that actually did that. Now, this is one of the top 3 most used FPV drones in Ukraine right now, and you know the volume that they're going through. So one of the most important things for guys like the SkyFall folks here is these are domestically designed and manufactured inside of Ukraine. So as many parts as possible have to be easily sourced inside of Ukraine. It's something I know we're working on in the United States right now as well, and we've got a long ways to go. We're getting there, but during peacetime, we're able to source all of these parts, let's say in the United States, no problem, but all of a sudden you find yourself in a wartime environment and you want to make sure that you still have access to be able to produce the weapon systems that you need to be able to win the war. That's one of the most, I think, most interesting things with organizations like SkyFall here. This is their 7-inch model. Now, a key component here that I want to show you is some new technology they've added to these drones. Is the auto tracking internal camera to auto track on the battlefield. So to kind of paint the picture here, we know that jammers are a major issue across the entire front, right? It's massive jamming being done by the Russians and Ukrainians to bring these out of the sky. And that can mean a number of things. Sometimes it just like literally brings it out of the sky. Sometimes it severs the connection between the pilot and the drone. Other times they just lose control. So what happens is a lot of vehicles right now, you'll see it, right, on both the Russian and the Ukrainian side, multiple electronic warfare jammers stacked on, and you'll see a drone like this Shrike 7 here coming in for the strike, and when it gets within, say, 50 meters of the target, it loses its signal and may veer off to one side or the other and not strike home. Problem solved. So Shrike has come up with this internal camera, and it's, we can come over here and look down below. It's this setup right here where it is built into the drone, and we'll take a look at the screen up here real quick to show you how this works. It's a tracker. So I'll put my hand here in the middle of the crosshairs, and then it tracks the movement of my hand by the pixel. So you can see how that would work. Lock onto you know, a truck that's moving, a tank that's driving, a Russian BMP, let's say, right? So you've got the drone 200-300 meters out, it sees the Russian BMP moving towards the front, it locks on, the pilot locks on. Now he's gonna try to pilot that drone in to actually strike the target, because why not? But if he gets close and that jammer is effective and it shuts off the signal or shuts off the control, it is still locked on, and it's going to track that into the moment of impact. So, you know, you can never say 100% certainty with anything, certainly not on a battlefield, but this is a major way that Ukraine right now is overcoming the issue of Russian jammers on and near the front. Now, the last thing here I want to mention about these Shrike drones, again, some of the most widely used FPVs in the battlefield today. A lot of these, you're talking up to, what is it? Look at my cheat sheet here, 30 kilometers of range. Like, do you realize how far we've come in the last couple of years? Like 30 kilometers, that's not gonna shock a lot of people, and it should. That is insane. Like, it wasn't long ago we were talking about like 10 kilometers, 15 kilometers, maybe. The Mavic range, maybe reaching out to 18 kilometers. Maybe it has a grenade that it can drop. Look, 30 kilometers. Like, that's further than some of the artillery I grew up firing, right? Like, I'm pretty sure that's further than our 105 howitzers can sling. Somebody's gonna let me know if I messed that up, but I feel like 30 kilometers is outside the range of our 109ers or 119ers. So anyways, this is incredible. Be able to see these. Again, this is the type of stuff between the interceptor, between the Vampire heavy bomber and the Shrike FPVs. This is the type of stuff being used by units like Achilles and all across the front in Ukraine. So big thank you so much to the SkyFall folks here that kind of walked us through everything, gave us a bunch of examples, and let us touch their stuff. And we didn't break it. We haven't broken anything yet, which is great. I thought I might, and we haven't, so that's a big win. But again, this is a group teamed up very closely with Achilles and their first name basis with all of the drone units in Ukraine, helping them do what they can to stay in the fight and hopefully win this war. So really cool experience there, and of course we're grateful to the SkyFall team that took time out of their day. They were busy, like 5 days in a row at the show, all day. Their booth was just completely swarmed with people genuinely from around the world asking questions and watching these videos and picking up the drones and wanting to see what this crazy new technology is. I mean, not for as many videos as we see of, the Vampire, these FPVs and interceptors being utilized, this is not normal. Like, most of the world is not watching those videos. So it is shocking new technology for people to learn about this. And they were fascinated, trying to soak it in as much as they could. So incredibly generous of the SkyFall team to take the time and answer all of our questions and let us record some of these videos to share with you all. Again, something that I think was really interesting is a lot of this is the exact same equipment being used by Achilles, the unit that we are fundraising for right now. In fact, I talked about that with the SkyFall team. I was like, hey, we're doing this fundraiser right now with Achilles, and they know all of the people in Achilles and all of the other drone units for what it's worth. Turns out they're pretty well tied in over there. If interested, enable and contributing to that fundraiser, that will, of course, be linked in the description below. I'll also link some of the SkyFall social media and their website if you want to learn more about that incredible organization. But that's all we got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.